back to the second part of the junior mock React interview. So this is the coding portion. So this is going to be us actually writing code in the editor. I've got a problem that I've seen a lot and that I've received a lot, which is just hitting an API, rendering some things to the screen, and doing some kind of basic filtering. I think Cody did a really great job, and I think he handled a lot of like a really interesting way. At the end of this, we do a debrief where we go over the verbal portion and the coding portion, and it can be really useful if you're preparing for an interview or if you just want to kind of get my perspective on how I may have done things a little bit differently. But let's go ahead and jump right into it and see how Cody handled this problem. Let's go ahead and get started. On the screen here, we've got kind of the requirements for this little project, this like tiny little project. And the basic concept is we want a list of starships from the Star Wars API, and they're just gonna come back in a result. You can kind of read up the documentation about how that works. And what I want to be able to do is have a search bar at the top or a filter bar at the top. And as they're typing it on key up, it's actually filtering the results to show things that start with that or include that keyword. So I'm intentionally kind of being a little bit vague here because I want you to kind of figure this out. And again, this is, junior interview here. So I'm not expecting you to like write this big elaborate thing with hooks and context. Just build it how you would want to build it, and we'll just kind of go from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, and I've got some features there. Those are like some kind of the big ones I want to hit, but if you rush through those, I've got some wish lists that we can talk about if we get there. So, but let me go into. And
you want it on key up, or as they're typing, it kind of filters them?
Yeah, on key up, at the filter. Yeah. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start the timer. So you're on the clock. So, and then if you could just try and talk me through things as you're doing them, because I can't see inside your head, and that would help a lot.
Okay, perfect. So, as I was just mentioning in the verbal portion, I do like to build my own hooks generally for fetching, just because it makes it super easy for me. And you can still see my screen, right?
Yeah, you're coming through good, yep.
Okay. So right now I'm just going to build a hooks folder with a hook called useFetch. And inside of this hook, I'm going to have a few things like data loading and error. I use data as the name just so I can alias it as something else inside of the component I want to use it in. Makes it a lot easier for me to understand that way.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start by getting all of those states down. And prior to this, I did install Axios, so I will be using Axios. And since I am using TypeScript, I'll try to use it as much as possible. I know that Axios has Axios response methods or types. So constant loading. And then for my loading state, I'm going to use a Boolean type and set it to true in the beginning, just so that it's always going to start as true. And error. Set error. And I don't Axios error. And just set that empty for now. So from this point, I will generally make a function that fetches the data, and it's going to be an async function for my requests. And this function is going to take in a URL. It's going to be a string. Missing something here. Arrow function. I'm going to start this function by setting loading to true, just so that when I call it, if it was previously set to false, it'll go back to true. And we're going to do try catch block just because it's super simple for me to understand, and it usually handles all my errors if I need them. So I'm going to set a result equal to an await for my axis.get, and inside of that we're going to pass my URL. Let's import that. Once I get that result, I'm going to set my data to that result. Result.data, actually, just to make sure. Config data, groups, unit data. And then we're going to do a catch block for my errors. Set error to error. And what are we getting here? So I'm not sure why that like this. Look at that, I fixed it. Anybody. And maybe come back to that after, but finally, we're just going to set loading to false because I should either have my data or I should have my error. From this point, I'm going to do a use effect. And in this use effect, we're just going to fetch the data. What was the dev/API/starships?
Yep.
Okay, let me just copy that. So I'm just going to set the initial URL to that. Starships. And import that. And we'll do that with an empty dependency array. So first render. And to finish it off, we're just going to do a return for data loading error. And I will do fetch data as well, just in case I need. So that's pretty much my use fetch hook. Sometimes I do different things if I need it. I have done caching inside of this. It's super simple. It's just like a basic JavaScript object, and then I check to see if that URL was previously inside of that object, so I don't have to fetch the data again. Okay, so yeah, that's my hook, and I'm gonna come back to this home page now, and I'm just gonna import my data. Call it starships, so I don't get confused. Loading error is equal to use fetch, and now I am going to just console log this and just make sure that I'm actually getting some data back. Let me start the server up here. Do you see my console?
Yep.
When I'm okay, cool. You don't see my browser though, right?
You're actually sharing your localhost 3000, so I can actually pull up the browser and look at it.
Okay, sweet.
It's pretty cool. Let me go ahead and stop whatever I'm running in the other window. Give me a second here. I mean, you can go on without me.
Okay. Infamous use client. Okay, so if I go to my console right now, I am getting back an object with a count of 36 next and some results. So, and you want to get, what is the most important feature right now? Just the filter?
Yeah, well, let's just get them listing out, and then we can filter them. So the biggest thing is just to see them kind of on a list, which would be a great start.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to set a new variable called Starship Array. And that's going to be equal to starships dot results. Property result does not exist on type access response. I'm not sure what that means, and for time's sake, I'm just going to put any in my use fetch hook next to the Axios response. So now if I go to Starship Array, and I'm going to map out each Starship. And for each one of those starships, I'm going to return just an H2 that has the, what do they have on it? Starship. And if I save that, I get an error. So let me figure that out. I'm gonna do this. Not that. Cannot read property of results. I'm gonna remove that for a second. Let's go back a step. Oh, I know why. So I'm going to do some error and loading checks just to make sure that I'm not getting any problems with that before the data comes in. So and we will do error dot message. And I'll do my favorite loading, where it's just a div with loading dot dot dot. Loading. So now I should be able to go to starships dot results now, and as it's loading now, I have all of the starships displayed on the screen. So I just had to make sure that the data actually was there before displaying them.
That's always good idea.
Yeah. Okay, so got some stuff on the screen now. And do you want the manufacturer and starship class as well right now, or just the names? That's fine.
I mean, it's up to you. Long term, I'd like it to have name, manufacturer, and class on each of the list items. But obviously, get as far as you can, as fast as you can. But if that, you feel free to move on to another item.
I think I'm gonna try to implement this search query right now. So I'm gonna just have basic search name here, and set search name. Set this to state. And I'll set that as a string. And to start, it'll just be an empty string. Oops. So now, let me kind of look over my steps here as I go. Search. So I'm gonna have an input. And these are these. And option. Effect. One of these effect that is the starships. Each result. That's just the starships. Okay. And then now that I have that search name, I'm gonna put the div up here. Inside of that div, I'm just gonna do input type text. And it's gonna have a value of my search name. And it's also gonna have an on change on top of that, where it's gonna take in the event, and each time that event happens, it's going to set the search name again. And that's going to be set to the e.target.value that we set from our input placeholder type here. Okay, so beautiful input at the top here. If I type in it, should be able to get some letters back. And I'm gonna go to the documentation quickly and see how I'm gonna search for them itself. So starships. So you want me getting back the data of that specific starship is what you want?
What I want is, as you're keying up, that list is being filtered down. So instead of being 50 things, it may be 5 things. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Search name. And just want to make sure that I can search these properly. Well, I know for a fact I'm going to need another use effect. I don't think that should. Actually, no, I already have my data. So, results.
And I'll include this at the top of this file here, just kind of a reference point of like how to do searches.
Oh, it's in the documentation.
Yeah, so there you go. So that's kind of the template for it. Should have included that in the requirements.
Okay, search R2. Okay, I see what you mean. I thought once I had like the data on the screen and you just want, like, I kind of thought I wouldn't have to call the API again. I just filter out those results, and that's not what you want. You want it to actually search the API again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair, confusion. I mean, API searching versus, or filtering versus UI filtering, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to write a function here that's going to fetch the starships, but more than likely I'm probably going to just do this in my use fetch hook again, but it makes it easier for me to see when I'm on the screen. And it's just going to be another async function. And it's going to let the URL be, what was the other one? Starships. So the URL is going to be just this basic Starships one, and it's going to have question mark with search. And I'm going to do this as a template literal, so I can get a variable in there of search name. And URL for search. So and I'm gonna put this inside of my user factory now. And I'm gonna put an empty. I'm gonna put a dependency right here with like a search name, just to see if it does change at the moment. I don't know if that's bad practice, but I'm gonna do it right now. How we're gonna do it. Push Starships. So inside of this function, I'm gonna go. Oh, I don't think I can use it inside of there like that. Oh no, I can do. Thought I exported function fetch data. So inside of my fetch Starships, I'm going to fetch data, and I'm going to just do the URL. And I'm just going to go fetch Starships here inside of my root effect. And let's watch everything break. Yeah. Okay, rendered more hooks than during the previous render. I will be honest, I don't think I've seen that error before, so I'm just gonna look it up real quick. Rendered more hooks than previous. Do you have any suggestions on that?
I would just say, look at how you're using the use effect in your page TSX.
Page.tsx. Fetch Starships async. Could I just? Rendered more hooks than during the previous render. When you say look at it, like, is there a specific spot you want me to notice? Or
Is there a specific line that's,
yeah. No, just because I'm very unsure.
Yeah.
At like first look.
Yeah. I might need to play around with it a little bit. It's probably like right in front of me, but I think what I probably wouldn't do is use the fetch from the hook and then pass the URL in, and it may be kind of re-rendering a couple times or different ways. So I would probably maybe just for the sake of wrapping this up or kind of getting something, is to just do a fetch right there. Just so that way it's not like trying to reuse the hooks in different ways and re-render it multiple times.
Yeah, that's something I've never encountered, so I'd have to read up on that first. So we're gonna fetch that URL then, and then search data. I may do my catch. And just for sake of going, we'll do that. And we'll do filter. In my head, like I feel like I could get rid of this use effect, but I think I'm going to be a little bit messy.
Yeah, this is just kind of a, quick and dirty kind of nature of it. I'm sure if I gave you a week, we'd be able to get where you're trying to go.
And then we're gonna set. I think I just messed this up. Set results to. Property data does not exist. Oh. Someone's at the door. That's okay. Okay, I am a little stuck here right now, but I'll figure this out.
Yeah. We're at time.
Okay.
So if you want to catch your breath, get some coffee, answer the door, whatever you need to do, we will do a quick debrief. But this is you've been killing it so far.
Thanks so much here, Justin.
I know.
I was like, I don't know, like I said, I'm a very slow person when it comes to coding, and I like take my time. And
that's a very zen kind of process.
When you told me 25 minutes, I was like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But
well,
sure.
The goal is not to build a rocket ship here. I think getting as far as you've gone was really good. So before we kind of go into the debrief, how do you think you did? What do you think was, good, bad, ugly? How do you feel?
I always feel like my own knowledge of React is like it's where it needs to be, but yeah, I need to articulate it better. And with coding itself, I'm a slow person, but getting these reps of trying to get things out as fast as possible, not as fast as possible, but trying to get a result in a shorter amount of time is definitely quite tough in interviews, because I know you have the opportunity to look at documentation, but there's always that sense of, okay, I'm being timed here. This is an interview. I got to show my skills. So I just need to work on that portion.
Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations. You knocked it out of the park. I do have like a page of notes here, but I think a lot of them were like really positive. We'll kind of go through the verbal then the coding, but overall I'll say very, very impressed, very pleased. I would definitely bring you on as a junior or mid level developer, no doubt. You know a lot more than some junior developers that we've hired, and I think your ability to kind of just showcase your skills is really impressive. So yeah, good job on that. There's always these things I notice, but it's really good news, because you're like these 7 or 8 things away from being really impressive, just wow, knock people's socks off. And it's easy things to tweak. And so I'll kind of mention these to you, but pat yourself on the back, because you've already mission accomplished. These are really just icing on the cake, easy things to work on just to take it to the next level. So first thing was verbal. We'll kind of go through, well, what do you want to start on? You want to start on the need to, nice to improve, or you want to start on what you did good?
I always like to hear the good news first because it's like a motivation.
Oh, okay,
but
good news first.
Then I like to hear the critiques, and then it's like fuels the fire a bit.
Oh, okay, so we'll start with the good and then we'll on the critiques. So kind of going through the questions here. So just kind of going through all the positive ones. So we talked about the key, and you kind of mentioned indexing and why you need to use key and those kind of things. That was pretty good. You kind of knew what it was. You were familiar with it. Those kind of things really good. When we talked about filtering results, you knew about dot filter. You kind of knew, you would filter things pretty easy. So I thought you had a good understanding of what filter did, really good. So that was great. You understood how components work. Obviously, you're very familiar with it. You've done plenty of components, even though we didn't do one here. Really, well, sort of did, but didn't do a bunch of components in this interview. But it's clear that you know how to do components. You knew what they were. You kind of mentioned prop drilling. You knew that turn of phrase, which I thought was really good. And you were familiar with some of the things like state management, Redux, those kind of things. You were at least familiar with the concept, and I thought that was really good. Also, you kind of were able to discuss hooks, those kind of things. You kind of knew the ins and outs of them. You know, use effect worked. Also, I was a little kind of confused because at first you were like, hey, I'm not super familiar with some of the custom hook ins and outs. But then in the coding interview, you just immediately started by writing your own custom hook. So I was like, okay, well, I guess he does know custom hooks.
It's one of those things where that's one I've written a bunch of times and different variations of it. So I understand it. Like, I'm sure if I went to my other projects, I have a few that I've written, but yeah, I personally scrap that one out of the side. It's like, okay, I'd have to take some time to know if I really can put one together.
Yeah, I would put that in the I know it column, and I'm getting better at it. So I would say, hey, I know what it is. I write them all the time. There's one that I really like using that I write called use fetch, because when you described it, I thought it was like one that a library you imported, but it was you actually wrote it. So put that in the I know it column and own that. So that was really good. So let's move on to some opportunities for growth in the verbal section. So I think getting a little bit more clarity on the for each versus map would be really helpful. So the map mutates as it goes through. So for example, if you want to do the square root of something, you would actually do a map over it, and it would actually mutate the array as you go through it. So that's that. The other is like for each, which isn't actually mutating anything. You just loop through it, and it doesn't return anything. It just goes through it. And so that way, if you're doing some operation outside of it, like you have an array or something that's just like an empty array, you can do a for each over some stuff and stick things into it, but it's actually not manipulating the original array. So anyway, even I'm kind of loose on the exact words.
So my description's kind of like reverse then?
I think you got it pretty reverse, but you were familiar with them, and I'm sure you would know how to use them, but just knowing like the intricacies of those, like which return values, which don't, which mutate, which don't, those kind of things.
Yeah, super useful to know.
Yeah, but that was a pretty easy thing to get squared away. I think, let's see here. I think an easy thing to get to nail down is things like context providers, those kind of things, and how they work. So that way you could just articulate it really well. You already know how to do hooks. So the idea of like having sort of a central hook that maintains state throughout the entire app, or multiple context, I think would be very easy for you to be able to articulate. And it's like one of those where you're right there, you're already custom hooked. So it kind of felt a little like, how come you can't nail down what a context, or you didn't at least in that response include that. So I feel like there's a lot of easy wins to be had there just by kind of.
It's one of those things too, like even when I write context still, like every single time I have to look up what the syntax is for it, and I have to go through a lot of the documentation again. Like I know why I'm going to use it, but yeah, there's a lot of ins and outs that I still I have to read up on every single time, it seems like.
Yeah, I think, yeah. And I do think kind of mentioning, like, I was like, what are the pros and cons of like passing in data to a component? And you did mention like, well, you can have a single source of truth, those kind of things. So, kind of being aware that like, okay, there are some advantages of passing things in, but usually it's like, okay, I want a local state. I don't want a global state. I want a local state. And I want a central little place to store that information. But I'm not really deep in anything. Components aren't nested enough to justify context, but I maybe want like a local state that's kind of makes sense to pass in state to it. But, I think there's like a lot of like conversation you could have around why you would want to pass in state versus use a context versus whatever else, versus like reusability of the component, those kind of things. So like being able to kind of articulate the case for passing in props versus using a context versus whatever else. So I think having a good understanding about that, I think would be good. But again, that was like really nitpicky because as a whole, you kind of showcased some understanding of it, which was good. Yeah, so verbal I thought was really good. Sorry.
The coding bad stuff. Let's hear it.
Coding. Oh, I'll go straight to the coding bad stuff. So, and I got code on the screen here. So I feel like there was a lot of really good stuff. Like I think your ability to just jump in and start writing a hook was like, wow, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. I felt really good about that. But I do think there's kind of like some easy. These are like free ones, like this, like test taking skills. There's like interview taking skills that I think you could easily master because a lot of these are like freebies. So one of them is like, before you really dive into it, just take some time and ask some questions, even just as a formality, just to make sure you're really clear on it. Like state the obvious. Like you're like, I'm pretty sure you just want me to list this and do this, right? I mean, it's even no matter how obvious the requirements are, just articulating them, because if there's a misunderstanding, you could just, that's going to save you time. And in general, if somebody doesn't ask questions, it's like, okay, in the real world, requirements are really complex. So we want to assume that he's the kind of guy who just by default asks questions and doesn't take anything for granted. That being said, there's obviously, I've had folks that spend like 15 minutes asking questions and you're like, okay, you're like trying to not actually write the code. But I do think having a minute or two would have done wonders just to be like, okay, I think I know how this works, and maybe do some pseudocode to kind of jot down, okay, I'm going to do this, and just a little bit of road mapping I think would do wonders towards making it clear that you're a planner and you're not just going to rush into anything, no matter how simple it is.
I definitely feel that. I do feel that like with the time limit, I did stress a little bit, like, will I have enough time? But I do understand the importance of what you're saying. It's just one of those mental things like, gotta go.
Yeah. And if you run out of time, you run out of time, but you want to make sure you're at least checking the boxes. And one of the talk boxes is, hey, did he like ask questions? Incidentally, it gives you time to like calm down, relax, but okay, this is actually easy, and asking questions is a good, easy way to like kind of warm up and get yourself like, okay, this is go time. This is just a Justin thing. I mean, some people may not care this is junior interview, but I do think an easy win would be is inside the use fetch or anywhere. There's a couple places that you mention, I guess 2 places that you mentioned the API URL, is just to put that in a const, like just whether, even if you put it in the hook file, but just extract that URL out into its own const would be really cool. And so that way you could reuse that.
I think usually I would use, I think Axios still has it, but it has like a Axios.default base URL.
Yeah. And
you can use that as well. So I think I would usually use that. I think this was just like spit it out on the screen.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely a nitpicky thing. But it kind of just shows, okay, well, I'm thinking a little bit around the corner a little bit. I do think kind of it was a strength and a weakness. So I'll focus on the weakness side because it was really cool seeing you actually write out the whole hook. Is there are some boilerplate things that just took a little bit of time. Actually kind of see you kind of work through it a little bit, that either be able to kind of like pump it out faster. Again, this is really nitpicky because I mean, it was really cool seeing you write your own hook and understand how it works using types and those kind of things. But it did just take up a lot of time. So like being able to either do it faster, have a snippet, or have some way of like really being able to pump it out faster, or just mention it, say, okay, I'm not going to do a try catch and finally, normally I would do a try catch finally, but in this case, because of due to time constraints, I'm just going to do this. Does that sound good? And then check in with the interviewer to say, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the short route. Is that okay? Just because I normally would do this, but out of sensitivity of time. And you get the best of both worlds where you don't actually spend the time doing it, but you get credit for how you would normally do it, but you're under a time constraint. And if they say, no, go ahead and type it out. It's no big deal. Hey, boom, no harm done. But having those check-in moments with the interviewer allow you to know whether they want you to dive deep or they want you to go. Because some interviewers love the details. Like they just want to watch you write this hook all day and that's all they want. Other people are like, yeah, I kind of want to like see something on the screen by the end of this interview. Let's get it moving. And would have been fine with just a raw Axios query. So good thing is, and you could have done this really before you wrote a line of code. Like, do you want me to do a hook or do you just want me to do a query right here in the file? Like, what are your thoughts on how deep you want me to go? And just kind of, expectation setting, because again, we all know given months and months and months, we would write beautiful code, but in the context of 25 minutes, corners are going to be cut. So you might as well check in with them and say, what kind of corners do you want me to cut? I think that would be an easy win.
Cool. Yeah.
See if I can read my handwriting here. Oh yeah, so you use types. I love types. TypeScript's awesome. Showcased a lot of skills. One of the tricky things is you kind of half-did it a little bit because you did some innies, which is fine. But you also had like issues where it was like, hey, what is this dot results? There are no dot results on data because on line 5 here, you were saying, hey, data is going to be a response. But really, if I was like really wanted to blow it out of the water, you really wanted to kill it, is if you could kind of quickly just copy and paste from the Star Wars API their schema and be like, okay, well, I expect there to be a results property, and the results property is going to have a list of starships. And I don't need all the things, but the main things I was interested in looking at is the name, like maybe an ID for a key, class, and like whatever manufacturer, and at least put those 4 properties in a type. So that way you've got your own little type, and you say, I know there's other things on here, but this is what I'm interested in actually like looking at. And so that way, data dot would say, oh, data has results on it, and results is a list of starships, those kind of things. So either do the types or don't do the types kind of thing. Like if you're gonna do the types, just go ahead and do that extra 2% and blow people out of the water by actually creating a new type. Even if it's in the use fetch, like you don't have to create your own types file or folder or anything like that, but just include that. I think would have been an easy, like, blow people away. Like, wow, this guy's like a real TypeScript. Yeah.
I see what you mean. Like, because I would have put it up here as like the interface and like, do API response like that. Yeah. And then,
yeah, easy. And that would have allowed you to get the dot completion and all that stuff on the other file. And that's why I was mad, is it was like, hey, Axios response doesn't have these things. So finding some way of like, either go all in or say, hey, I'm just going to do raw JavaScript. Hope that's okay. Like, have that check-in. But I think you already went this far. Just do that extra 5% use types. Okay.
Yeah, I had like that dot results not on there. Like, I don't know right now. I'm just going to keep it.
This is a quick one. You would have caught it, but you didn't use a key on the loop inside of the H2. Again, no one's losing sleep over that. You would have got it, but it is nice to see people as they're doing it, just including it by default. Like, be so used to doing it that you can't do it wrong, kind of thing. That would have been really cool to see. But again, I'm really having to stretch to nitpick here. But also, there was a couple of moments where you just kind of went quiet, like where you just didn't talk for about 2 minutes. And again, this is one of those like tricks to just be like, you really can't over talk in an interview. You really can't. Like they're not going to say, hey, could you like be quiet? They're going to say, man, he was quiet. So that's an easy win, just to keep babbling even if you're just saying, no, I don't know what to do here on that kind of question, I don't know why that's not doing, no matter what, unless you're just complete like nonsense, saying something and keeping the ball rolling, because when you hear silence, it makes it think of like, did he just hit a wall or is he thinking? And those both sound the exact same. So making it verbally, just keeping something flowing is just does wonders for the perception of your ability. And again, this is all about perception.
Cool.
Easy win there. Let's see here. Yeah, that was really good. I mean, there's so many little things, like I do think looking back, like I bet you would do this differently now, but
Well, I think I would have had like some type of variable called filtered results, and then have that using a function itself.
Yeah, I think if I were to do this, now looking at this, I'd probably do this, and I'll just do it real quick just because to make it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it.
So I'd probably again, there's 100 ways of doing this, but like in a quick, spontaneous way, I'd probably do like, kind of like a search query right there, or like a query or something in here, and then it would actually have that filter results in there or something like that. Or even better, I'd probably actually have a fetch data like you have, but inside that fetch data, when you actually call it, you can actually pass in a query. So on keyup or whatever, you have a search name here, so we'll just use this. On keyup, you would actually have like a fetch data that would actually fetch based on the search name, something like this. So I'll just do like this, query the search name, and then the fetch data you could actually have. And if we pull up the fetch data here, fetch data, another file. The fetch data, I would actually have it, instead of it taking the URL, because there's only ever one URL, is I would actually have it taking the query itself, optionally. Or you could default it to an empty string. Maybe default it to an empty string where, hey, it's going to be a query, whatever, and yeah. So anyway, something like this where it's a string, those kind of things. It's an optional string. Maybe we'll do that, optional string, and you then actually use that in line here to, instead of doing the fetch down here or something like that, you actually do the fetch inside here. So you actually do the get URL. You do template literal, that kind of thing. Oh man, press the wrong key here. Like that. Zoom in a little bit more here on my screen at least. And then, because I think if you pass an empty string, it like just doesn't do anything. So I don't think there's any downside. It could be wrong.
I don't think it does a search for it.
Yeah, so actually I meant to do this. There we go. But something like that, where it's like, okay, it's an optional thing, and or you could do like, whatever, a fallback or something, whatever, or I guess a fallback would go here. You could do all kinds of things, right? I mean, man, I don't know what I was doing with equal sign there, but yeah, something like that. And then that way, by default, it calls fetch data with an empty string. And again, you could make this optional or something like this, or you could default it to, there's a million ways you could do this. Something like that. You default to nothing, and then on key up, you're able to do like that. Speaking of which, I've changed my approach on this. I used to do use effects all the time. I think use memo is my new favorite, because really, what is use memo? Use memo is saying, I basically just want a variable to be equal to something else, but that something else is either expensive to get or it's time consuming. I don't want to rerun every time. Like I wouldn't want to do I wouldn't want to do this. Like that's obviously that just looks janky. But in effect, that's kind of what I want to do. Like pretty much whenever anything really changes, I kind of want the new results, please. But a use memo is it's made for that. Basically, you say, hey, okay, well, don't re-render every time. Thank you very much. I really just want you to re-render when search name changes. And then that's really what I want. And, that's really what I want. And it's nice one line, and it's kind of more to the point. Instead of a use effect where you have to have a thing and then a thing and a thing and then a filtered results, those kind of things, you just have results, and they're always filtered, or they're not filtered depending on your API, and then you can just use results, that kind of thing. That's an idea there, or I guess it is Starships. results?
Yep.
Filter. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I guess in this case, because of how you're doing it, you're not, the fetch data isn't returning the data.
I see where you're going with it.
You see where I'm going with
this.
this.
I think the way I just set it up was for time, and then I got to the next step.
Yeah.
So, okay, I gotta make changes.
Yeah, in this case, fetch data doesn't actually return the data. This does, so maybe you would want to do a use effect, and it just watches that. So it kind of depends how you set it up. But anyway, you get the idea of having some if by having it all contained in here, it allows you to have it cleaner out here, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So, and the fewer places you have things, the less hook conflicts and those things you will get when they're calling each other. When hooks are calling hooks, things can get a little wonky. Anyway, you get the idea. But yeah, I thought this was good. I do like you were quick. E dot target dot value. I know it sounds silly, but sometimes folks are like E dot is a target. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's talk about good stuff. I know we're way over time here. You talked about the hook. Went straight to it. Really impressed. I was like, oh, this guy knows how to do hooks. Awesome. You did TypeScript. Loved it. Awesome. I liked how you did try catch finally. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I mean, you understood it. Again, there's some downsides as we talked about, like the time. Again, the alternative to these things is do the cool thing, but do it fast enough where it's not a big deal. And if you move fast enough, there's really not a lot of downsides to moving really, really fast, because if you go in the wrong direction, it's no big deal, because you're like, oh, that doesn't work, I can come back. But if you kind of move slow, if you go down the wrong path and something's not working, like the hooks weren't working here, and you're like, you kind of run out of time, and you just kind of left with it sort of half done. Even though I saw you knew what you were doing. I mean, it wasn't not really that big of a deal. I do like, I know it sounds silly, but I do like seeing these kind of things where you're like, oh, you're doing the object shorthand and the semantic sugar, those kind of things. I do like seeing that. That was good. You kind of quickly addressed the issue. There was this thing where it wasn't loading and it wasn't working at first, and you quickly understood, oh, it's this and this, and you got it working almost immediately. That was awesome. Great to see that. You did find out workaround with the any. It was like a quick plan B, boom, any. And I was like, oh, there you go. It works. I do like the fact
that's usually how it goes with TypeScript. I have to look at the errors, and especially in this time, it's like I know what it wants me to do. I know what I'll have to do, but I just need to get past this for now.
Yeah, exactly. I do like the fact that you even had the concept of error and loading, really cool, and that you were had it had the flags here, error and loading. That's really cool. I love that. So I was really pleased seeing that. So it was really good. I like the fact that you used template literals, knew what they were. You went straight to using them. There wasn't you weren't doing a bunch of concatenating strings and stuff. You knew what to do there. Yeah. Overall, I thought it was really good. You're definitely a strong hire for a junior role. For maybe a mid, I'd probably say a higher, maybe not strong hire, but this guy can pick it up really quick. And I think if you had kind of addressed the things I talked about, you'd become a strong hire. And everything I mentioned is effectively free to do, other than getting in the reps. So I thought that was really good. Yeah. There you go. How do you feel?
That's a lot of the things that you said are just things I know about myself already. So I already feel that, and that's things that I, like you said, just got to put in the reps over and over again until it's second nature. Yeah, a lot of easy misses. That's just how it is.
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
how it is. But this is a really great loop to practice at, because this does a lot of the things that interviews can expect and in real life you're going to do. You're getting some data, and you're going to need to do some checks against it. And the data may be fast, may be slow, it may come back weird, and being able to do types, do the checks, and being able to render it out is huge. So you were able to do all those things. So now it's just getting it done fast and getting used to the kind of that hook effect memo, however you're going to get the data, getting a really kind of a pattern that you can consistently do and works well. Even if it's this isn't the best, but it's bulletproof. I know I'm always going to get the data and it kind of does what I need to do, and it's a pattern, and I can turn my brain off and just boom, my fingers do it. Yeah. And that kind of leads to the last point, which is you already probably like very fast. I'd probably say above average speed, but there are some things that you're like, okay, like a state, your hands can type state faster, probably twice as fast. So like easy win to just put in those reps and really try and say, okay, if I got to write out 5 states, like, you know, use states, how fast can I do it? So that way you can spend your time solving really tricky problems and impressing people, and not just like doing the boilerplate, which is like not going to win you any brownie points.
Yeah, I don't really have any snippets, and I should get on that, because when I'm watching you, it's like snippet, snippet, snippet.
Yeah, even if it's snippets, I think are huge, especially for the hook, where you're like, okay, I do this every time. But I think even if it's not hooks, just like getting your fingers where they can just like pound it out really quick, and that's just a reps thing, and like try and do it really fast every time.
Cool.
But yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for being patient. I know we went way over, but hopefully this was useful. And yeah, thanks for your time.
Cool. Thank you so much, Justin.
Awesome. Cool. See you. Bye.